Hey friends, it's Anna. Happy August. This month's bullet journal setup is so dear to my heart because we are going to be creating some Totoro inspired spreads, one of my favorite Studio Ghibli movies. I know you'll love these spreads if you're a fellow Ghibli fan, or if you're not, trust me, I'm about to introduce you to something incredible. Grab some tea or coffee, get cozy, and let's start journaling. We're starting off with the cover page on this right side. I'm using the fine tip of this pink Tombow pen to write out August as the title. I'm writing it in a cursive font, which is based on a script I found on Pinterest. I'll put a picture up on the screen and link the pen below. I have a whole Pinterest board dedicated to fonts just waiting to be tried out in my journal, and I feel like this one goes really well with the rest of this theme. Now we're using a Pigma Micron fine liner to start on my Totoro drawing for the cover, and of course I had to do the iconic profile of Totoro that makes up the Studio Ghibli logo. I'm going to spice it up a little bit with some flowers bordering the bottom, but besides that, I tried to pretty much exactly replicate the original drawing of Totoro and another one of his mini-me's. So in case you have no idea what this is that I'm drawing right now, Totoro is a forest spirit character in the movie My Neighbor Totoro, which was produced by the famed Studio Ghibli, which is a Japanese animation studio. They have produced so many of my favorite movies: Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Princess Mononoke. My Neighbor Totoro is about two young sisters, Satsuki and Mei, who are moving into a new house in a rural area of Japan, and their encounters with the tree and forest spirits there. Just like all Studio Ghibli films, it's such a lovely, whimsical story, perfect for kids and adults who can still connect to their inner childlike wonder. If you haven't seen it yet, please do yourself a favor and watch it. And if you're completely new to Studio Ghibli, you should still definitely watch this one, but also be sure to check out Spirited Away. That's usually the movie I have people start with if they've never watched a Ghibli movie before. That or Howl's Moving Castle, dependent on the person, but you should really just watch them all. Anyways, getting back to the spread, I wanted to complement Totoro with a little floral design that will kind of curve around to frame him. To finish up the drawing, I'm adding a few little stars, and now we're going to color this in. I'm using mostly Tombow colors and some brush pens from Ohuhu as well. I'll list all the color numbers and have links to all the supplies I'm using in this setup in the description box below in case you want to check that out. Totoro is gray except for the white patch on his belly, so I'm just going to color him in. This gray was a little darker than I was expecting, so you'll see me actually switch to a lighter shade for the rest of the setup. I'm not doing any fancy shading, but just adding another layer on some of the outlines to add a small amount of depth. Now for the flowers, I'm using a few different shades of light pink. This is one of the main reasons I wanted to add flowers, just so I could add some color to the setup. And once I had planned to do the pink florals with Totoro, that's when I thought to use the darker pink for all the titles to kind of tie it all in. The pink I used on the last flower also turned out a little darker than I thought, so you'll see me eventually make some of the other flowers darker as well to help balance it out. I do usually use a separate piece of dot grid paper to test out my color palettes, but this is a new journal and I think these pages are just a little different than the paper of my test page, so the colors are coming out more of a surprise. I absolutely adore how this cover page turned out. I feel like the floral accents are super fitting to a forest spirit, and I love the color that they bring in as well. I'm creating a spread I've never used before, but I saw a picture of someone making a monthly dashboard in their journal on Pinterest, and I liked that concept, so we're going to try it out. I'm using the same font for the title up top, and then I'm going to create a few different section headers with my alphabet stamp set. I'm going to use this space for any general notes about the month, what my absolute must accomplish priorities are, and then a little area for YouTube content planning. I haven't set up my full content calendar at the beginning of my journal yet, so I'm just going to have this little makeshift section in the meantime. I'm using this really light pink color to make these sections a little more interesting and further separate them with some lines and grids. I don't know why, but I feel like that makes the spread look so much more satisfying. And then for the YouTube space, I'm going to make 2 mini calendars for August and September with some space to the side, which is where I can write videos next to their tentative weeks. So basically the spread is for some general planning for the month. I'll have my calendar and also a master task list on the next spread, but so far I'm liking having this page for some miscellaneous planning. In the bottom left, I'm adding one of the drawings that I'm most excited for in this setup because this is from my favorite scene of the movie. It's the scene where Satsuki and Mei planted their acorns and seeds they got as a gift from Totoro, and they have this kind of dream of them and the forest spirits helping the seeds to grow. And right after that, they're all sitting on top of the trees, blowing on their little wind instruments, which is what this drawing is of. I chose just to include Totoro and one of the other smaller spirits in this picture here though, so I'm drawing another miniature version of the big Totoro next to him. I think he's just another forest spirit. I also don't really know if spirit is the correct word, so if you have any more insight into the lore of Totoro or these creatures, feel free to let me know in the comments. Also, I would love to hear from you guys what your favorite Ghibli movie is and why. I think mine is actually Whisper of the Heart, not because I think it's necessarily the best Ghibli movie out there, but just because of how I relate to the main character, Shizuku. I just feel like that movie was made for me personally, like it was a gift from Hayao Miyazaki to me, which I know it wasn't, but it's just so special when a movie is that personal to you. So yeah, I would love to hear what your favorite movie is. To color in the picture, I'm switching to a lighter gray for Totoro. I usually try for the colors in my journal to be slightly desaturated so the pages aren't as overwhelming. I don't want the art to overpower the functional portions of the spread, but this gray was pretty light, so I did go over it twice. The mini Totoro is this light blue. In the film, we have 2 other smaller spirits that tag along. One of them is blue and the other is white. That one is the little guy sitting on Totoro's head on the cover page. Then we'll color in the little sparkles in the sky, and that's it for my August dashboard. Flipping over to our next spread, both of these pages will make up my August calendar. I'm again starting with the title in the same font, and you might notice even though this is a calligraphy style font with certain lines of the letters being thicker, I'm using the fine tip point to just draw it out and fill in the thicker areas. I really wanted to use this pink color for the titles, but the brush tip is a little too large for me to confidently be able to do calligraphy this small, so we're doing a little faux calligraphy instead. Most of this page is going to be taken up by the calendar. I'm drawing each day as 6x6 squares in this A5 size journal. And you might have noticed I accidentally made one of the lines too long, so I'm going to pull out my white gel pen to cover that up. If you've been following along with me, you know I've done some experimenting recently with a monthly log instead of calendar. You can check out my April, May, or June setups to see that. But for now, I'm switching back to a calendar layout because in these summer months, we have so much travel that I really need to be able to visualize the month and when we'll be in town and how much is going on each week. And it's easier for my brain to do that with a traditional calendar design. I might go back to the log eventually though, in months with less travel and big events going on. To the left of the calendar, I'm using that space for my monthly task list, and in the bottom right, I'll make a little color key. I'm using all this empty space on the left page to add another Totoro drawing. I absolutely love this one because I'm giving him a little flower crown, which I think is so fun, and he'll have another one of his little buddies perched on top of his head. I'm really happy with how all of these drawings turned out. They're actually very simple to draw. The art style is pretty flat and minimal since I'm not doing any extra contour or shading with the colors. I think the biggest thing is getting the proportions right. The eyes, for example, Totoro can look very different depending on where his eyes are placed. So I definitely did some drawing and erasing until he looked the way I wanted him to. But I feel like drawing your favorite anime characters or even Disney characters from the older style animation is really fun art practice, especially if you're a beginner artist. I feel like a lot of artists even got started drawing from trying to recreate the characters we saw in animated films as kids. So I'm giving Totoro his little flower crown and the smaller white forest spirit nestled on top. I think my other favorite part of this drawing was pointing their eyes to have them looking at each other. And something about making the little guys slightly cross-eyed is so adorable to me. To finish up the drawing, we'll add some more sparkles and the color. I oftentimes add sparkles and stars around my drawings because it makes everything feel a bit more magical, and I feel like that's especially applicable to a Totoro theme because the movie has such a whimsical feel. And that's it for my calendar page. Flipping over to our next two pages, this is the second to last spread of this setup before we get into my first weekly of August. And this is a very specific spread to me and this month. I'm titling it A New Adventure because my husband and I are moving to a different state in August. So this is my spread to plan and keep track of all the things we still have left to do related to moving. I feel like this general layout though could also be applied to any major projects that you're using your bullet journal to keep track of. I'm creating section headers again with my alphabet stamp set. The right page is for post-move tasks, and I'm actually not going to mark it with anything besides that for now. I'm going to wait until we're in our new house, and then I'll have this space ready to use then. On the left page though, I'm making a little timeline section for keeping track of our plan for traveling to our new location and closing dates and such. And then below that is my pre-move section, which I'm dividing up further because I already have in mind all the tasks I need to brain dump on this page and the main categories those would fall into. As for decorating this page, there's not a ton of empty space, but that's totally fine because I already knew I wanted to draw some tiny little soot sprites here. These soot gremlins, I think it's actually what Nanny calls them in My Neighbor Totoro, are another type of friendly spirit. In the movie, they are inhabiting the old house that Satsuki and Mei move into, and so it felt extra fitting for me that I could draw them in a moving spread because I kind of associate them with moving into a new place. These guys are also in Spirited Away, and in that movie they work in the boiler room and are fed these little stars. So that's why I'm drawing the stars floating around and the soot sprites reaching out for them. These are the easiest things to draw. I start out with a circle and two ovals for eyes, and then I make the edges a little spiky by scribbling around the outline before coloring them in. Even though they're just black fuzzy balls, they can each have so much personality through just where their eyes are looking, and I'm also giving them arms and legs so they can interact with the stars. They definitely have a fun personality in My Neighbor Totoro, and especially in Spirited Away. These guys are so funny. To finish up this page, I'm going back to the shades of pink that I used for the flowers and coloring in the stars with those, and then I'm doing the sparkles still in yellow. Like I mentioned, I'm waiting until we've actually moved to try to organize the post-move page, but I did want to add a little drawing in the corner because it felt really bare. I saw this sketch of a small Totoro with some suit sprites on Pinterest, so I wanted to use that design. He's also going to be holding the big leaf that Totoro sometimes uses as a hat or a makeshift umbrella. Every time I drew a new Totoro in this setup, I was like, this is now my favorite drawing. So I just cannot even tell you guys how much fun these spreads were to create. That's it for this moving spread. Now getting into my first weekly for August. It will take up 4 pages and have a faux Dutch door, which I'm showing you here. My header is actually going to be on the right side of this last page, but because of the Dutch door, this column will be visible no matter what day of the week I'm looking at. Hopefully that makes sense, or at least it will when I fold the Dutch door back again. In the top space, I'll have the dates that this weekly will span and a mini August calendar. The bottom half of the column is for a weekly task list. I'm using 4 pages for this weekly because I'm actually covering 9 days here. We arrive back in town from a trip to Iceland on Friday, so I'm just adding the following Saturday and Sunday to be included with the following week. You can see on the mini calendar I highlighted the days I'm including for this weekly in case I'm not explaining this well. Now I'm making the boxes for each daily section, and I'll stamp out the days of the week and dates with a little pink highlight behind them. Now flipping over to the first pages, I'm going to do the same thing to create all the daily sections here. Most days will get a full column, but a few of the columns I'm splitting into 2 days. I chose which days to give smaller sections to based on what I know is going to be happening throughout the week and which days I knew I wouldn't need a lot of space to be planning. Also, I had to condense to fit the 9 days into these 4 pages. But that's one of the best things about bullet journaling is that you can customize it to fit exactly what you need. If you've been watching my journal evolution for a while, you'll probably recognize this weekly format. This was the layout I was using for a long time before I found a different format that I've really liked for the past several months. But I'm going back to this 4-page design because I think that will work best for this particular week. Again, I think the fact that bullet journaling is customizable is so helpful because I don't know if there's ever one perfect planning format, even for each person. I think it really changes depending on what's going on in life at any given moment. Some weeks it might be really helpful to have my planner look like this, and some weeks maybe a different style would be more useful. So I love that my journal can go with the flow. Now, it is also a little more work when you're constantly changing up your spreads, but everything's a give and take, I guess. Now to add some final decorations, I'm bringing back the florals on this left page with a few suit sprites hanging around. Then on the bottom of the page, I'm going to draw a little trail of Totoro and his crew, complete with some more suit sprites bouncing along at the end. The smaller 2 spirits will be tugging along some sacks, which are most likely filled with acorns. I love this little entourage. Again, every time I make a new drawing, I'm like, this is my favorite drawing of the setup. Let me know which Totoro has been your favorite. Maybe you're less indecisive than me. I truly had so much fun creating these spreads. I, of course, watched the movie while I was sketching them out, and then I was also listening to the soundtrack while filming. I feel like what makes Studio Ghibli films really stand out is their whimsical, wondrous nature, but also the appreciation for all the little moments. The movies never feel rushed. We take our time on small things like packing a lunch or going on a walk, and it really celebrates the magic and fulfillment of those everyday tasks. I saw this post somewhere that said, live your life like a Studio Ghibli movie where every moment, no matter how insignificant, is beautiful and charming. And that has always inspired me. I'll probably write that quote out actually in one of my other August weeklies as a reminder. I'm finishing up coloring these guys in, and I did have the Dutch door folded in, but now I'm going to fold it out and add some more soot sprites. That way it still has the same design if the page is open. And then I'm going to flip over to the last 2 pages and create the same exact drawing. That way, no matter how I have the Dutch door folded, it will maintain that same design. You'll see what I mean in a second when I fold it back. And with that, I'm finished with my August bullet journal setup. Here's the final weekly drawings with the Dutch door in action, and now let's do a final flip through to see all the spreads together. This setup gave me so much happiness to create, and I hope you guys found a little joy following along. I recently migrated into this journal for the second half of 2024, so if you want to see my new journal setup, I'll leave that video up for you guys to check out next. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm wishing you a lovely August.